Good morning, Cardinal fans, and welcome into Card Central 365. I'm Ethan Hannaford. He is Brenden Schaeffer. And as always, Card Central 365 is presented by Gray Bar and sponsored by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Cardinals coming off of a 5-0 win last night, where we may have seen not only the best start in Sonny Gray's career, but I'm trying to think how long it's been since we have seen a St. Louis Cardinal be as masterful and as efficient as they were last year on the mound for a full 9 innings. And you know what? I'm struggling to come up with a name in recent memory. Brenden, how you doing this morning? And what an outing last night from Sonny Gray. I think you're muted, Brenden. Hold on. Let's get that mic unmuted.
There it is.
There it
That's a
is.
little production value for you. Yeah, Sonny was unbelievable last night. He was efficient, as you said. 89 pitches to complete the Maddox, one hitter, and that's the only base runner he gave up. But then to also strike out 11, like it's usually one or the other. You know, you'll see those strikeout games where guys will rack up double digits and they might go 6 innings, maybe 7, and they'll probably walk a few guys, and that's what gets their pitch count up. There wasn't any of that. He was as dialed in as we've ever seen him. And as you said, I don't know how many Cardinals in recent memory have come even close to that because there's not really a blemish on the record. It's a perfect game, save for that one hit that he gave up. And to do it on 89 pitches is just unheard of. It was something to watch last night.
I need a rating. You know, we're always big on people getting involved in the comments here in the chats. What do we think about this? Jay Call, great outing. I need a 1 out of 10 on the quality of this comment. What are we thinking, Brenden?
I think it's pretty good. I think it's even made better by the fact that he kept it all lowercase, no punctuation, simple, just kind of throw it out there. It's not like he tried to oversell it. He said, "Hey, great outing."
Nice and simple. J.
Little
Cole,
tongue
we
in
love
cheek.
you. We appreciate you being here. Someone mentioned that Shelby Miller had one probably 10, 12 years ago, where he threw, I think, under 100. It was a Maddox and had 13 strikeouts. Someone mentioned that one to me, but I mean, that was probably, I mean, that had to have been early in his career. That was probably what, 2012, 2013. So I mean, that was 13 freaking years ago. So
Yeah, do you remember, how old are you? Do you remember stuff like that from a dozen years ago? Not vaguely?
not, I mean, ish, kind
Yeah,
of. I mean, like I was a pretty invested fan when I was even during 2011. I could tell you a bunch about 2011 and 2013. So
sure.
to a certain extent, yes, but it's not like as clear as it would be now, obviously. But anyway, yeah, last night, big win for the Cardinals. Getting back, it almost so felt like they kind of got back on the right footing, right? You know, a couple of losses against Chicago that kind of left just a bad taste in your mouth as a Cards fan. The way you started that series, weren't able to finish it, you weren't able to take it. So Sonny Gray, being the guy that he is, taking the role that he has, able to get things back on the right track. What have you overall? You know, I mentioned this last night, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. We are officially halfway through Sonny Gray in St. Louis, at least this contract now, right? The 3 year, $75 million deal. And, you know, there was some talk like, okay, it's definitely a better deal the first year than it is the last couple because you're going to pay a little bit more on the back end.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, Sonny Gray will be up there in age a little bit. But I tell you what, if you look at the last couple of years, Sonny Gray has been at his best in 23, 24, and 25. You could argue the best 3 years of his career. And in this year has been not really any different. Now, has he been top 2 Cy Young candidate? No, but you could still argue that he's a top 10, top 15 starting pitcher in the league based off of some of the general numbers. When you look at the quality that we have gotten out of Sonny Gray halfway through this contract, what do you take from it?
I mean, I think Sonny Gray was a perfect fit coming to the Cardinals. And that last year you mentioned, it's been kind of a recency where his numbers have even gotten better than what we've seen over the course of his career. Strikeout stuff has been really, really good. It started with that 2023 season where he finished second in the AL Cy Young race when he was with Minnesota. And look, coming to St. Louis, I think when you buy a guy off of a year like that, a career year, there is a little bit of a sticker shock sometimes where you go, you might not necessarily be getting exactly that performance that he gave in his most recent season. That's kind of what we talk
Right.
about a lot of times with a contract year. Guys step up, and it's like, yeah, you've done it at the right time. But I would say that really the Cardinals have gotten bang for their buck at this point through the contract. He's got a 3.3 some odd ERA this year. I mean, that's pretty good when you count the strikeout numbers, when you count the big game pitching. Like you said, the Cardinals kind of in a way needed a stopper last night, because if you lose that game, suddenly you look up and after a good stretch, it's, oh, that's 3 losses in a row. What's going on? And he's able to minimize that sort of narrative and put a stop to it quick. He's done a lot of really, really good things for this Cardinals team. And I think the nature of the contract being backloaded is not something you can punish him with, because that's just the way the deal was structured. He gave you a really solid first year, even if some of the numbers inflated a little bit compared to his Cy Young race season. A little bit of that was, home runs, and home runs given up on the road was certainly something that jumped. I think that was really the main difference you could point to from his 2023 season to 2024. And I don't know if there's really a perfect explanation for it. It just happened that way, and sort of was trending that way so far this year. But he shows last night, home road, like he can still be an elite pitcher when he's locked in. And that is the definition of an ace, by the way. I mean, Sonny Gray is that guy for the Cardinals, whether we want to, debate it or not. I think he is definitely filling that role halfway through this contract. And, I think there's all the reason to believe Cardinals finish this season strong in the race. They're competitive, whether they make the playoffs, make a run, don't, whatever. I think you can expect Sonny Gray to generally still be in the fold for next year as well. I don't think, if they had lost 90 games this year, maybe you're talking about him being more open to an offseason trade. But I think right now he's a key part to what the Cardinals are doing, and the contract is paying off for sure.
Uncle Tag saying Sonny Gray is a dog. Could not agree anymore. You look at the split. Obviously, it improved drastically after last night's outing, but
Yeah.
at home, Sonny Gray 5-1 with a 2.76 ERA in his 10 starts. On the road, 3-1 now with a 4.37 ERA. I believe that this dropped his ERA close to a run and a half at
On the
home.
road.
Or excuse me, on the road.
What'd you say it
this
fell
year.
to?
Someone told me that it was just under 6.
It was. What's it now? Because I did happen to look at it before.
4.37.
Okay, yeah, because it was when I was looking Thursday, because people were kind of chirping about, well, why isn't he starting the home game against the Cubs? And the reasoning for that would be like 2 consecutive day games in the heat. He only threw like 76 pitches the first time. You saw him last night at the end in the post-game interview. It was only like 84 degrees by the end of last night's game. He was soaking through that jersey. Like, he's just a guy that runs hot, and it is what it is. They were giving everybody else in the rotation an extra day. They gave Sonny an extra day. That's part of the plan, gang, for what they want to do with the rotation, keep him healthy, keep him fresh, keep him effective. So that's number one. But during that conversation, I did happen to look it up. His ERA was double on the road what it's been at home. He's in like the mid to high 2s at home, and he was in like the 5.86 range on the road. So you're right. 9 innings of shutty baseball is going to do wonders for that mark. And look, can he continue to be that kind of guy no matter where he is? I think if he's locked in, he's locked in. That's really what it is for Sonny Gray. And last night, he was very clearly locked in. You got to love it.
And I'll say this too. If this Cardinals team is going to have success down the stretch, you can't be avoiding road starts for Sonny Gray. You just can't. I mean, you cannot dance around that. Now, at times, if you know that he is a much more effective pitcher at home and there's an ability to perhaps do something, maybe, but I don't think that Ale Marmol is super concerned about the splits. He's never been a guy that, looking at some of you remember last year when the Cardinals could not buy a series win, or
series opener.
The series opener, right?
Yeah.
This year, the struggles early on the road. I mean, this is 6 starts for Sonny Gray now, and not all of them have been bad. He's had a couple of blowups in there that make it look bad, right? But I think he's probably looking at this and he's saying, yeah, it's not enough for me to really be like, this is a concern. And I bet Sonny Gray would probably say something similar. You'd probably give a little bit of a longer answer to that. But I imagine that's probably what we would hear. Last night, Sonny Gray clearly was on. We saw the ability to get the swing and miss from the sweeper last night. I think he generated 8 of his 13 whiffs last night were on the sweeper. but that was set up so well by the location of the four-seam fastball
That's it.
and the sinker as well as the cutter. What did you take from the usage of his fastball that Uncle Ted here is commenting on?
I think he had everything dialed and could put it where he wanted to. And I was listening to part of the game on the radio broadcast while I was out and about, and they were just talking about 92 looks and feels different when you're a hitter when Sonny Gray is pinpointing it the way that he was last night. And there's some truth to that because first of all, it's a good pitch. And when you're putting it in spots as a veteran pitcher where they're not going to be able to get the barrel to it, makes it even more effective. But when guys have to be thinking about that, and like he can spot this literally anywhere around this plate that he wants to, and the stuff that's breaking is so devastating, it can be a guessing game for hitters. And once you start guessing up there against Sonny, you're going to lose on a night where he's got everything working and he can locate because he's got 6-7 pitches that he can, maybe even more than that with the way that he can kind of shape and do different things, take some off, put some on. That is something that Sonny Gray, when he's got the variety of fastballs working like he did, good luck. I mean, there's just not a lot that you can do. And by the way, circling back to sort of the bigger picture conversation, as you were talking there, Ethan, I looked it up on Fangraphs. Do you have a guess at where he might rank wins above replacement since the beginning of the Cardinals contract among starting pitchers?
Easily top 10 in baseball.
He's top 10. He's number 9 in baseball in wins above replacement since the beginning of his Cardinals contract. Top 10 pitcher in baseball, ace, the guy you want. And by the way, the one area where I agree 100% with what you said about Ollie Marmol, he's not going to look too much into the noise, as you would say, when it comes to certain splits. When you get to the playoffs, if the Cardinals are in a best-of-5 series and you can move something by a day to get him at the ballpark where he's going to suppress home runs even better, maybe that is like the extent of the conversation. But short of that, it has been very clear that the Cardinals have maintained a schedule and a system and an approach to the way they want to handle their rotation this year. And you cannot argue with it. Like, it's worked so well. If you're still nitpicking on, well, why didn't he start Thursday? You're just looking for stuff to complain about. They have done a masterful job, Ollie and his staff, of mapping this out from day one. It's why they were able to tell us before the opening day game, hey, Steven Matz is actually going to start on April the 16th. You're like, what? It's just unusual to hear that. This is going to be like our 6-man rotation down the road. We know it 3 weeks from now. But they have had the ability to map things out, and it has served them very well. So I just want to continue to credit that because I think it's a big reason that the Cardinals are where they are right now, just in the mix. I'm not saying they've won the division. I'm saying they're in the mix in a year where people probably didn't expect that. And that can be attributed to a lot of different things. But the coaching and the managing and the way that they have sort of massaged the pitching staff to keep it fresh, I think is a big part of that.
And I think that, the last couple of years, when you look at some of this coaching, especially in the fan base, there probably is some, but there's been a lot of questioning, right? Is this the answer? Is Dusty Blake the answer at pitching coach? Is Ollie Marmol the answer at manager? In my opinion, what they've been able to do in 2025 with this roster, which is more talented, I think, overall as far as potential goes than the last couple of years, right? But there is so much greenery on this roster, and there's so much potential for growth. And you have to imagine that these guys are going to continue to move in the right direction. But for them to do what they've been able to do, Dusty Blake deserves so much credit for everything you just said and being able to build out everything and do the research to put together a game plan on a night-by-night basis. Now, I know he has some more support than he has in the last couple of years, right, to be able to do those things well. And but for Dusty Blake to be able to do what he has been able to do and set this pitching rotation up for success is a huge reason as to why the Cardinals are where they are. And it's why you can say halfway through the year that you can argue that the pitching staff is the most improved, but also still the most concerning, right? Because you're like, can they keep it going? Can they stay healthy? Up to this point, they've been able to do so. And you see the Cardinals, they're 8-9 games above 500 right now, or whatever it is, 7 games. They're in a good spot because they've been taken care of it and handled with so much care.
Yeah, I think a big part of the offseason that was so interesting to think back to that time was like we knew the Cardinals had lower expectations by virtue of they weren't going to do anything substantial to the roster, adding pieces, making big trades to help the team. If anything, they were trying to trade to make the team worse with the Arenado talks. They were going to spend a lot of money. And that was going to be an interesting conversation for 2025 because as Chaim Bloom is ushered in after this season, there's a different guy calling the shots at the highest level of the organization from a baseball operations standpoint. And so then it becomes that individual's charge to go, what do I think of the pitching coach? What do I think of the manager? What do I think of the roster? Like, we don't know. We haven't had, heard a lot from Chaim Bloom to have any real idea. And even if I think we had heard from him, he would keep things close to the vest of what he really thinks. So it was a lot of just speculation and guessing of like, well, if 2025 doesn't go well, it's kind of not supposed to because they're not adding to the roster and they're going to let some of the guys internally, showcase and see where they're at. It's kind of like an organizational audit. And that could be bad for people that are maybe coaching or managing for their jobs. If the new guy goes, well, they didn't win enough games. Like there's a lot of thoughts that could have gone into that. And what's been so amazing is I feel like you were never, as the St. Louis Cardinals, going to win the offseason by doing nothing. Like they were going to win the press conference. They weren't going to win the offseason headlines. They weren't going to, but they show up to spring training. They were a little chirpy when you got to January winter warm up and a couple of quotes of like, yeah, we think we're going to be good. They're kind of puffing their chest a little bit, but they also know like nothing we say matters. We're going to have to show it. But there was like a quiet confidence about this group of what they were about to be, from players to coaches to manager. And it's been really refreshing and rewarding, I think, to see that play out so far, where people are like, we weren't going to be able to tell you so in February. You weren't going to believe us. But now that we're doing it, it's just like, well, this is what we were going to do all along. That's what we believed at that level of the org. Managers, coaches, players. That's a very cool thing that's playing out right now. And I think they've won some people over. You guys like you and me, I think we saw, because we get a little bit more access, a little bit more insight than the day-to-day fan may. But I think it's been really cool to see like a lot of what under the hood we have appreciated about Ollie and his staff. It has kind of shown up in ways that fans are now going, now, actually, I can kind of get on board with that. That's been cool. That was kind of the segue from what you had to say about the pitching, but I think just you could make a generalization about the team, and that would be true in 2025.
Another guy that was, solid last night, got the Cardinals on the board, was Pedro Pages with the solo home run. Hardest hit ball of his career, by the way.
Wow.
111.
Got out in a hurry.
It did. Nice and quick over that tall left field wall. It reminded me of Rajai Davis in Game 7. Rest in peace. He's not dead. Just the 2016 Cleveland Indians are. And then he also gets brought on for the post-game interview with Sonny Gray. Brought on by Sonny Gray.
Yeah.
Is there enough to say about the job that Pedro Pages is doing? I mean, this is a guy that a year ago right around this time a year ago, he's making his major league debut, maybe a little bit longer than a year, but it hasn't been long that he's been up here. And for him to be able to be doing what he is doing with these pitchers and really take that starting spot by force. I mean, Contreras moves to first and it was open season. And I don't think a lot of people said that Pedro Pages was going to be the guy that was probably getting more than 50% of the starts. He's taken that spot by storm. And, clearly, anytime you see Sonny Gray showing emotion, right, or you see him showing affection towards someone, it means something, because he's usually a pretty even keel guy. And, I thought last night spoke a lot of words, told us quite the story about not just what Sonny Gray thinks, but what this starting rotation thinks about Pedro Pages.
Yeah, and look, I'm not right about very many things. I'm usually a dummy, right? But this was one that I was hammering home in the offseason, and I was trying to tell anybody who would listen, Pages will start more than half the games for this team. That doesn't mean Ivan Herrera is not going to bat in 120 games, but he's not going to catch in 80. And it just was the way that it was going to be because of how over the moon the Cardinals have been about Pedro Pages. And this is something that, when he first got his chance last year, I think they had an idea about it for sure, coming from spring training and just from what they hear down in the minors and through the system. But to see it play out at the big league level, and just when a guy like that shows up and you're kind of getting his bearings and figuring out what he's about, and you just see the professionalism and the day-to-day and the work ethic and the preparedness that he brings, it shows, and it doesn't take long to win over a coaching staff. Whatever they didn't know about him, they found it out pretty quick. And look, I know that a lot of times we look at the numbers offensively because that's the easiest thing to quantify. We all know what a good batting average and a bad batting average is. We all know what a good OPS and a bad OPS is. We know these things, And Pages is on the lower end of the scale there when it comes to offensive productivity. But he also bats 8th in your lineup. And what he brings at the most important position on the field besides pitcher, and I do still believe that to be the case. I mean, shortstop would probably be right up there, but the influence that catcher has over the game, even in modern baseball in 2025, I think is so substantial. And Pedro does such a good job at so many things. Now, granted, his blocking is one thing. If I were going to look for a criticism over the past month or so, been a few instances where balls scored away and it's like, all right, that's got to be cleaned up. But historically, he's been pretty good in that category. Good with framing. We got the question about, can he hold the running game? Look, relative to whatever else is on the roster, yes, I think is the answer to that question. I'm not saying he's going to be Yachty back there because nobody ever has been or will be again, more likely than not. But he's very, very good in the mold of Yachty for what the Cardinals are accustomed to having in their organization at the catcher position. And part of that is, too, our pitchers going to do their part in holding the running game, et cetera, et cetera. Pages does a really good job back there. And, like, part of this, too, is I wonder from last night, we know Sonny has a pitch com, has his own input on what pitches he's going to throw as well. So when he says, I only shook Pedro one time, it's like, well, are you dictating a lot of what's happening, too? But the fact that you can have two guys, a veteran like Sonny Gray, who has been around the block for decade plus and has a very meticulous way about doing things, when he can mesh with a second-year catcher, a rookie last year, a Pedro Pages that comes in and like have that sort of relationship that quick and have that where they're kind of like on the same page. And if one guy's thinking one thing, the other guy's thinking it. And if not, as Sonny detailed on the last play of the game last night, he said that's the other time I tried to shake him and he's like, no, go with this. And like, that's what I consider to be special about Pedro. If you're kind of looking at the details of what's going on here, it's detail oriented, Ethan. It's not something that jumps off the page like an OPS would. You can't just quantify it with how many home runs a guy's hit like you can with everything on offensive statistics. Pedro Pages is a really, really good catcher. And I think he's the type of player that will continue to become clawing his way closer to league average at the plate as time goes along. But he's the Cardinals catcher. I'm not saying it'll be that way forever, but they've got one that they really like. And I think we saw part of the reason for that last night.
It's going to be very interesting this is probably more of an off-season conversation, maybe even a 2027 opening day conversation, right? But with the amount of talent that the Cardinals have in their system at the catcher position, it's going to be a very interesting conversation eventually that we'll be getting to with guys like Jimmy Crooks, Leonardo Bernal, to be coming up. And because that Pedro Pages is not going to be just giving over that position. So that'll be something interesting to keep an eye on eventually, Brenden.
And it starts in February, in my opinion. I mean, when you get to spring training, not that like that's going to be someone's going to lose a job there, but you're going to be a year further along for guys like Bernal and Jimmy Crooks. The onus, though, is going to be on them to be like, all the things that Pedro does really well, I can be 85 to 90 to 92% of that. And I'm going to show that to the Cardinals coaching staff, because if they cannot do that, and look, I don't know. I know fans, again, what do fans see? They see the guy hitting bombs at AA. They see Jimmy Crooks' good offensive numbers at AAA. There are fans for sure that watch more minor league baseball than I watch. But you're not going to notice the things that the Cardinals need to notice about these catchers to say that they're going to compete with Pedro Pages for a job, because you're going to have to wait till they are at spring training at the big league level, eyes on them, to see it. And those opportunities are going to be interesting. I think you might almost have to have a positional change for Herrera before we really find room for one of those guys to do that. And that could be February. I mean, that could be next year. They're not going to say it this season, but they could say, look, we're going to actually trade somebody that you didn't think we were going to trade. And now, bang, Herrera's an outfielder. Like, things can change and they can make those decisions. But I just would warn people that are like, oh, I've seen Bernal's numbers. He's a great hitter. He's going to, let's see. Because you thought that about Herrera, too. And guess who's catching? Pedro Pages. And that was going to be true whether Herrera was healthy or not, by the way. Like, it might feel like I'm only correct about all that because of the injuries to Herrera. I'm telling you, this is the way it was going to be anyway. And it's just happening in a lot more of a pronounced way because of the injuries to Ivan Herrera.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Cards Central 365. As always, is sponsored by Gray Bar. We appreciate them, and presented by DraftKings. We're going to tell you about DraftKings in just a moment. And then following that, we're going to take you through today's starting pitching matchup. Miles Mikolas on the mound today for the Cardinals. But as mentioned, first, let me tell you a bit about DraftKings. You download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. Do it right now. And when you download the app, you put in this code STL Sports. STL Sports. For new customers, that's going to allow you, once you play $5, you're going to get $50 back in Pick 6 credits. Come on, guys! Like, what a deal that is! All right, I'm not good with math here, but seems like a pretty good deal to me. Better payout, better wins, and it's only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Card Central 365. As mentioned, Miles Mikolas taking the bump today for the Redbirds. First pitch is at 3:10 at Progressive Field in Cleveland, facing off against. And I told you for anyone that was on the post game last night, I butchered this, but I said that I was going to butcher it. But I also told you I was going to make sure I had the right pronunciation today. Kudos to Brenden for helping me out. Slade Ciccone.
There it is.
How sick of a name is that? I just can't get over it. I can't get over it. I haven't. This is a guy. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I'd never even heard of him prior to
I didn't either.
But he's been pretty sharp in 2025. A 3.38 ERA in his 7 starts. 3-3 record. After spent the last couple of years in Arizona. Was not pretty for him last year with the Diamondbacks. ERA that was well over 6, but clearly he has figured something out in the Guardians uniform, and he will face off against the Redbird lineup today. We do not have the lineups yet, Brenden, with it being a 3:10 start a little bit later, but maybe we can linger for a few more minutes and it'll pop up here. But either way, Miles Mikolas, coming off of, I believe it was a couple of starts ago, a little bit more of a bumpy one, was able to smooth out in his last one. When you look at Miles Mikolas and overall the picture of what has worked for him this year, what does he need to do today to make sure that he sets up the Cardinals, puts them in a good position to try and take the series today?
Yeah, I think it's more about doing what he's been doing. You look at the last couple of starts, 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 innings, 2 runs that were earned, a 3rd run, unearned. Give him a chance to win, get through 5 or 6, limit the damage to 3 runs or fewer. That's something that he has done with the vast majority of his starts this year. And you go from there as an offense that's going to have to put up 4 or 5 runs. I think that's generally the mark that you're chasing in a Mikolas start. There's nothing wrong with that. That's really the nature of the beast when it comes to a number 4, number 5 starter in a rotation. He's kind of a guy toward the back end of your 5-man unit. And if he can give you that requisite 5 innings, 6 innings, really today, I would say 5 and 2. That's important than enough for me because the bullpen got a whole day off yesterday. Sonny Gray was able to provide that for the relief unit. And so that even though they're starting still on the early days of a long road trip before you finally get a day off in the middle of it prior to that 4th of July weekend, I think Ollie is not going to be afraid to get a little bit aggressive in this game if he has to do so because of the rested nature of the bullpen after what Sonny provided yesterday. So that's not been a position of luxury that we have seen the Cardinals in very much recently, and it is going to be the case in this afternoon's game. So I'll be curious if it's 5 innings and he's up 85 pitches or so. They might be satisfied to call it there and really line up the bullpen, especially if you're winning 3-2 or something at that point where you're like, all right, this game is there for the taking. We've got a rested pen. Let's go ahead and attack this thing. Would be really nice to see the Cardinals be able to, I'm going to say bounce back after the Cubs series because the way it was set up, you could have done so much more than split. And when you only end up with a split, now it's kind of the onus is on you to punch back a little bit. Taking this series in the second game would be exactly that, and would be a great way to start off the road trip too.
C. Ramirez saying Mikolas going 7+ today. Hey, I'll take that too. Hey, get the bullpen some beach chairs and some pina coladas out there. And let's give them another day off. I'm very okay with that.
If he's at 68 pitches like Sonny was through 7 yesterday, then I'm thinking they'll they'll be happy. They'll be pretty happy with that.
I think that that may be the first time in human history that the words beach chairs in Cleveland, Ohio have been said in the same
Maybe
sentence.
so.
But we're going to roll with it. Speaking of luxury, Brenden, I guess it worked out for the Cardinals yesterday. We already know that this Guardians lineup has been struggling a lot this year. They're without Jose Ramirez yesterday. That doesn't help them any. Not sure what his status will be today.
Yeah, that's gonna be
But
interesting to follow.
if he is not to be in there, that's another huge blow for this Guardians lineup, who already is having their struggles with him in the lineup. Taking him out, it really feels like it. I mean, you never want to see a player be injured, right? You never want that to be happening. It's bad for the league when Jose Ramirez is not playing games because he is that much of a big name, right? But it doesn't mean that the Cardinals can't take advantage of an already weak offense without their best player.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guy that is one of the toughest hitters in the league and probably one of the most underrated players in the league for about a decade or so, just how good he is. And it always seems like we know he's good, but people maybe don't fully appreciate just how good he really is. Stephen Kwan is in this lineup. I said last night when he was finishing off, or Sonny was finishing off that complete game, that's the last guy you want to see at the plate because he's going to foul pitches off. He's going to work counts and not strike out. So to be able to get the job done like Sonny did with him as the last batter was impressive. Not to take anything away from Sonny, though, the rest of this lineup outside of those couple of guys is not the requisite Guardians lineup that we're used to seeing in terms of production. So this is a possible one to navigate if you're Miles Mikolas. The long story short, whether Ramirez is back in there after getting hit by the pitch the other day, feels like one of those deals where he very well could be back in there. I would be almost surprised if he's not. There's still ways to work around the lineup, and you know what? If you can place a couple of walks against Jose Ramirez and it doesn't burn you, that's not going to be the end of the world. Don't throw him anything down the middle because that's kind of one of the things that gets Miles Mikolas into trouble. Yeah, when he's in a 2-strike count, buddy, he shouldn't see another pitch that's even close to center cut. And that's just if you lose him, you lose him. As long as there's not a bunch of guys on base already, that would be my approach to Jose Ramirez because outside of him, there's not a lot of guys that are going to generally harm you in this lineup to the extent that some of the other teams that we have seen the Cardinals face.
First time that the Cardinals will be facing off against Slade Cecconi. A couple of the guys in the Guardians lineup have had some history with Miles Mikolas. Carlos Santana, 4 for 14. Lane Thomas, 5 for 13. Jose Ramirez, just 1 for 6. A couple of other guys, a few at-bats here and there. We'll have to see how Miles Mikolas fares against this Guardians lineup in game number 2 of this 3-game series. Let's get started at 3:10 p.m. As always, we will, here on STL Sports Central, have the post-game covered for you. So be sure, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe us on YouTube. Follow us on all of our social media pages. We are on X, Facebook, Instagram, STL Sports Central. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Ethan Hannaford. This has been Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central. We'll see you this evening.